Welcome to the deep dive. You're here, I imagine, because you want to cut through the noise, get straight to what matters, without, drowning in information overload.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're getting into something really fascinating, actually. It's this challenge of turning our everyday language, the way we talk, into these super precise queries that databases understand.
Yeah, Text2SQL, making databases kind of speak human.
Exactly. How do we make them understand us? It sounds simple, but it's pretty complex.
Oh, it's way more intricate than it first appears. I mean, think about it. You ask a simple question about your data, right? Something you'd just ask a colleague.
Yeah.
Bridging that gap to the rigid world of SQL, that's the tricky part. And Mike Erlison's Substack article, Text2SQL, The Art of Teaching Machines to Speak Database, really nails this.
That's right. That's our source for this dive, published April 2025. And it's great because it's not just the techie stuff.
No, not all.
It digs into the language nuances, the context, what we really mean when we ask something, even the sort of funny misunderstandings that pop up.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is basically to pull out those key insights from the article, show everyone why getting Text2SQL right isn't just one thing. It's this surprisingly layered approach you need.
Okay, so let's start with that initial feeling, that intuition. You, maybe listening now, might think, okay, I ask, which customers churned last month? Simple enough, right?
Yeah, seems straightforward.
Why can't the computer just figure that out? Just write the SQL.
Exactly. But then you start thinking about what SQL actually needs. You need filters,
Yeah.
time periods. That's a where clause, isn't it?
Right, and you probably need to link up different bits of info, customer details, cancellation records maybe. That could mean a left join or something similar. Suddenly it's not quite so simple if you're just someone who needs a quick answer and doesn't, live and breathe SQL.
Totally. And this is where I think the article gets really insightful. Even when a language model spits out SQL that looks perfect,
Syntactically correct.
it can still completely miss the point, miss the user's actual intent.
Yeah, Mike gives this brilliant example. A query looked fine, ran fine, but whoops, it forgot all the EU customers.
Oh.
Because it missed a crucial join between tables. Simple mistake technically, but the results fundamentally wrong.
And that just perfectly highlights the core problem, doesn't it? These large language models, they're amazing, but they don't understand context or intent or, basic common sense like a person does.
Not really, no.
They're just really, really good at generating text that looks like SQL. It's not the same as knowing what the user's actually trying to find out.
Exactly. Mike uses this great analogy. It's like a magician doing a card trick.
Okay.
It looks like magic, like real understanding, but it's actually this incredibly sophisticated mimicry. It's based on statistical patterns, the context you give it in the prompt.
Right.
It creates this compelling illusion of understanding.
The illusion of understanding. I like that. That's a really key phrase. So if it's not genuine smarts driving this, what is making these Text2SQL systems work? Because it sounds like it's got to be more than just, aiming an LLM at a database.
Right. Oh, way more. Mike really emphasizes this. A good Text2SQL system isn't a one-model show. It's more like an orchestra.
An orchestra, okay.
Yeah, different parts, different components, all playing together. You need, for instance, a really smart retrieval system. Its job is to find the right information about the database structure, table names, columns, how they link up, and feed that to the language model.
Okay, so the LLM needs the sheet music, the map of the data. Makes sense. What other instruments are playing?
Well, then you absolutely positively need a validator. Think of it like a quality control check.
Right.
It looks at the SQL the model generated and asks, is this dangerous? Could it delete stuff? Or even just, does this query make any logical sense based on the database?
That sounds critical. You don't want it messing things up.
And then there's policy enforcement. Huge.
Yeah.
Making sure users only see the data they're allowed to see.
The security angle. Like Mike's example. You can't have just anyone asking for everyone's social security numbers from the users table.
Definitely not. That's a massive breach waiting to happen if you don't build in those checks.
Yeah, that's a total non-starter. But Mike also mentioned something that kind of surprised me. The need for conversational design. That sounds less about code, more about psychology.
It kind of is. Because, as Mike points out, people often don't ask perfect questions first time around, do they?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, we might be vague. Or maybe the question has contradictions we didn't spot. Conversational design here means the system needs to be able to sort of talk back.
Talk back. How so?
Ask clarifying questions like, did you mean this set of customers or that set? guide the user towards what they actually need, instead of just taking one flawed sentence and trying to translate it literally.
Okay, so it's moving beyond just making existing BI tools easier
Exactly.
to making the data itself conversational,
Yeah.
like having a dialogue. That feels like a big shift.
It really is. Mike argues we're moving away from just staring at static dashboards where you
Yeah.
kind of already need to know the answer you're looking for.
Right, towards something more fluid.
Yeah, more exploratory, driven by curiosity. It becomes this loop. Ask, see the results, analyze, refine the question, ask again.
Ask, analyze, refine. I like that.
That iterative conversation with the data, that's where the deeper insights often hide.
But for that to work, for people to actually engage in that loop, there's a massive prerequisite, isn't there? You got to trust it.
Oh, absolutely. Fundamental. Trust. If the system gives you flaky answers or different results for the same question.
You'll just give up on it.
Exactly. Consistency, reliability, they're paramount. Users need confidence that their words are being turned into the right SQL and their results are dependable. Without that trust, the whole conversational aspect falls apart.
Okay, that makes total sense. Now, Mike also gets into some of the trickier, maybe less obvious challenges. He talks about synonym drift. What's that about?
Okay, imagine the scenario. In your company, maybe people use revenue and sales pretty interchangeably when they're chatting, right?
Yeah, happens all the time.
But in the database itself, those two terms might point to very specific different calculations or columns.
Ah, I see where this is going.
An LLM, unless you specifically tell it about your company's jargon or give it a glossary, it might just pick one or get confused.
And generate SQL that looks right, but pulls the wrong metric.
Precisely. That's synonym drift. It leads to perfectly valid SQL, giving you a totally misleading answer because the model didn't grasp the specific business nuance.
Every company has its own internal language, doesn't it? Its own definitions, like trying to decode jargon from another field. And then there are the really subjective questions, like who are our best customers? How does Text2SQL handle that?
Yeah, that's an even bigger headache because best isn't objective, is it?
Not at all.
Does best mean highest lifetime value? Most recent purchases, most loyal over time, most engaged with marketing.
Could be any of those.
So the system needs a way to handle that subjectivity. Maybe it prompts the user, what do you mean by best? Highest spenders, most frequent buyers. Or maybe it offers a few interpretations.
So it's not just translating words to code, it's actually trying to interpret intent and meaning, which can be super fuzzy.
Exactly. Super fuzzy, context dependent. And then Mike drops this little bomb, maybe a bit harsh, but true. Your schema is a liability.
Ouch.
Huh.
I can hear data engineers wincing.
Probably. But it's a fair point if your database is, frankly, a mess.
Like tables called data final vendo yethasethasone.
Exactly. Or cryptic column names, redundant fields, undocumented links between tables. Even the smartest Text2SQL system is going to struggle.
It makes the interpretation harder, less reliable.
Absolutely. The ambiguity and messiness in the schema inevitably bleed through, causing errors or inaccurate results. So yeah, cleaning up your metadata isn't just good practice. Mike argues it's pretty much essential for Text2SQL to work well.
Okay, so pulling it all together, it's really not about finding one killer LLM. It's this whole system, this orchestra, as you called it.
Right. A multi-layered architecture, as Mike puts it, with distinct stages.
Can you quickly recap those stages for us?
Sure. First, input interpretation. Does the question even make sense to try and turn into SQL?
Okay, step one.
Then, schema mapping. Figuring out which tables and columns are actually relevant to that question. Super important.
Got it.
Then the LLM generation bit, that's where the model actually writes the initial SQL query.
The core translation part.
But it doesn't stop there. Next is validation and rewriting. Check for errors, check for security issues, maybe even tweak the SQL to make it run better or be more accurate.
The quality control and safety net.
And finally, crucial for that conversational aspect, feedback and revision. Let the user see the query or the results and say, no, that's not quite it, leading to another loop.
That feedback loop seems absolutely central to making this work in the real world, bridging that gap between fuzzy language and precise code.
Totally.
And Mike even threw in a suggestion about using humor.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
His point was, when things go wrong, like a user asks something totally nonsensical or the system just produces garbage, SQL, a bit of lightheartedness can help.
Instead of just saying error,
Right. Maybe something like, whoa, that query gave my circuits a bit of a scramble, mind rephrasing. It keeps it feeling less like a frustrating dead end.
I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Makes the tech feel a bit more approachable, less intimidating when it fails. So, looking at the big picture then, Is the end goal here to automate analysts out of a job?
No, Mike argues strongly against that. He sees text-to-equal not as automation, but as augmentation.
Augmentation, meaning?
It's a tool, a co-pilot. It empowers people who aren't data experts to explore data themselves.
Democratizing access.
And it helps the actual data analysts work faster, maybe handling the more routine queries so they can focus on the really complex stuff. The shift for Mike is language becoming less about just specifying a one-off query and more about this iterative process of understanding.
A tool for exploration and deeper insight, not just instruction. I get it.
Exactly.
And Mike wraps up by highlighting how exciting this field is because it pulls together so many different things: language, logic, UI design, security, trust.
It really sits at a complex intersection.
And he throws in that final humorous jab at real-world database chaos with that table name. TX 2021 B Cup, a final fearing final.
We've all seen tables like that. It's just a funny reminder that these sophisticated AI systems still have to grapple with the often messy reality of how humans actually organize things.
Yeah, the machines are walking into a world that's definitely not perfectly tidy.
Far from it.
So to kind of synthesize all this,
Yeah.
building Text2SQL that actually works well isn't just about fancy AI models. It's this really intricate blend of tech smarts and, maybe just as importantly, understanding human language, human intent, all those fuzzy bits.
That sums it up perfectly. And looking at Text2SQL this way, it really shines a light on broader challenges, doesn't it? About how AI and humans communicate, especially when precision and structured data are involved.
Right. Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with. As we increasingly use natural language to interact with all sorts of complex systems, not just databases, how do we find that balance? The balance between the flexibility and sometimes vagueness of how we talk and the absolute precision these systems need to give us accurate, reliable results. And maybe more fundamentally, how much will truly understanding the human side of that interaction shape the future of all this technology? Something to think about in your own interactions. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.